The doors opened with a soft hiss, and cool air touched my face. I stood there with my handbag hanging heavy on my arm, like it had grown stones in it. My son said, "We'll call later, Mom," in a voice that felt gentle but far away. The goodbye was soft, like a curtain closing on a stage when the actors step back into the dark. I never thought I would be carried out of my own life like a box someone no longer needed. Before I begin, I want to say something. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It warms me to know you are here with me, listening like an old friend across a small table. Inside the lobby, I heard the wheels of a cart and the small beep of a monitor. A woman at the desk smiled and said my name in a kind voice. I nodded and smiled back because that is what I was taught to do. My son and his wife stood near the door. "You'll be safe here," she said. "It's just for a little while." The words were soft, but they felt like packing tape pulled tight. I held my bag closer and looked at the window. I could see the parking lot and my son's car, bright in the sun. The strap pressed a line into my shoulder. He touched my arm once, then let go. Their steps faded as the doors opened and closed behind them, like breath. My name is Evelyn, and I am a quiet woman. I raised 2 children and tended a little life with my husband, Thomas. We worked, we saved, we cared for each other's small needs. I thought when my hands shook, theirs would steady me. I thought when my world got smaller, they would pull a chair closer and sit with me in the small. But love did not come from where I expected it to. It came from next door, from a woman who was not my blood but knew how to hold a cup and a moment in the right way. Later, I did something my children never expected, something that made room for my own voice. I made a choice that kept me safe, even if they did not understand it then. I will tell you this story slowly, like evening light moving across a wall. There is sadness in it, and also a quiet strength I did not know I had. I will not raise my voice. I will only tell you how it felt to be left, and how I found a hand to hold when I thought there was none. And I will tell you how a door closed, yes, but another door opened just next door. Before the nursing home, my life was quiet in a gentle way. I woke to the slow light in my kitchen and the soft crackle of the old radio on the counter. I made tea the way I always had, 1 tea bag, a little honey, and a small sip before the steam left. I would stand by the window and look at the marigolds out back. Their color was bright, like little suns, even on gray days. On the fridge, I kept a small calendar with tiny notes in tidy handwriting. I circled the church bake sales and the library volunteer days. I liked knowing my week had small places to be. On Mondays, I shelved books and wore a blue lanyard, even though I was retired. On Saturdays, I set out cookies at the church and chatted with ladies who had known me since I was young. There were photo frames on the mantel in the living room. One frame had my Thomas in his fishing hat, smiling wide with a small fish and a big grin. Another had Eric and June as toddlers with frosting on their cheeks and birthday hats slipping off. I kept the handmade cards they made as children, the ones with crooked hearts and stick figures. When the dust gathered, I wiped the glass with the sleeve of my sweater and whispered their names, like a blessing. Thomas built the little bench by the garden with his hands. He sanded the wood smooth and laughed when I said it was too pretty to sit on. "That's what it's for," he told me. Sometimes I sat alone there in the late afternoon and thought about the way his footsteps sounded on the porch. He had been gone for years, but I could still hear them, faint but steady, as if he were in the next room looking for a screwdriver. I was a librarian for most of my life, and that shaped me. I liked order, but a kind of order. I liked the feel of paper and the sound books make when they open. In retirement, I kept my days simple. I woke, I watered the plants, I read a little, and I took a slow walk if the sidewalks were clear. I kept my house clean and my bills paid. It made me feel steady and useful. Eric was my careful child. Even when he was little, he lined up his toy cars by color and put the blue ones together. He grew into a man who measures everything. He likes lists and calendars that send alarms. He met Paula at an office where there were more computers than windows. She is polite and she is strong. She believes life works best when we plan it down to the hour. With Paula, things are neat, and dinner comes from a clean kitchen with labels on the jars. June was my laughing daughter. As a girl, she ran down the hallway with bare feet and a ribbon trailing from her hair. When she grew up, her laugh became lighter, more like a whisper at the end of a long day. She married Daniel, who looks at her as if he found something precious in a thrift store and did not want to break it. He works long hours. He means well. He often looks tired in his eyes. We had Sunday dinners for as long as I could keep the roast from getting dry. At first, they came early and stayed late. They brought board games and stories from work and school. The table was full, and the kids passed the bread basket and dropped crumbs. We all argued kindly about whose turn it was to wash the dishes. Over time, the visits grew shorter. We still laughed, but the laughter packed its bag sooner. Lena, my neighbor, came into this slow life like a warm wind under a door. She lived 2 houses down with her boy, Noah. She worked long hours as a nurse's aide, but she always found a few minutes to check on me at the end of the day. She would stand on my porch with a small container of soup and say, "I made too much, Ms. Evelyn. Will you help me?" I knew she made it for me on purpose. I pretended otherwise so I could accept it without feeling like a trouble. Noah was tall and still growing. He mowed my lawn when the grass got brave. He played the old wind chime by the porch with his fingertip, like a tiny bell choir. He brought my newspaper to the door and held it like it was important, which made it feel important. Sometimes he would sit on the step and tell me about a teacher who told bad jokes and a friend who had built a go-kart out of plywood. Thomas and I had saved carefully all our lives. We were not fancy people. He worked at the factory in town, then later in maintenance at the school. I worked with books and children and the smell of paper and glue. We did not take big trips, but we took little ones to the state park and the diner with the good pie. We paid off the house in quiet checks over quiet years. We put small amounts into savings and a few safe things at the bank, the manager explained to us in plain words. It was not a fortune, not like the movies, but it added up in a steady way. We did not talk about it much. We just did the same careful thing again and again. I kept the bills in a folder by month. I knew which day the light bill was due and how much the water bill would be even before I opened it. I liked marking a check with a smooth pen and placing it in the mail slot with a little pat, like tucking a child into bed. On the first of each month, I sat at the kitchen table with my tea and my little stack of envelopes. I added numbers softly under my breath. I wrote notes to myself in the margins about what to pick up at the store, like fresh oranges or flour. I stretched every dollar carefully but kindly. When I was done, I felt a quiet joy settle on me. Thomas used to kiss my cheek when he saw the neat stack and say, "The captain has sailed us through another month." The first hint that things might be shifting came on a rainy afternoon in the kitchen. I was making soup, and I stepped on a small patch of water I did not see. My foot slid forward, and I sat down hard on the floor. I did not hit my head. I sat there a moment, surprised by my body and the sound the wooden spoon made when it clattered. I looked at my hands. They shook a little, like leaves in a small breeze. I did not call anyone. I waited. I reached for the counter and pulled myself up slowly. I moved the rag across the floor and wiped until it was dry. I sat at the table and took a breath. Later, when I told Lena, she touched my wrist and said, "You scared me, you know." I nodded. I scared me too. I did not tell Eric or June. I did not want them to worry. Or maybe I did not want them to decide things I was not ready to decide. Another time, I turned on the oven to warm it for biscuits and got distracted by a phone call. I cannot remember what it was about now. I remember the way the air felt too warm against my face and the smell of heat. I walked into the kitchen and saw the empty tray on the counter and the oven light on. My heart thumped hard. I turned it off and stood still until my heartbeat calmed down. I told Lena that one too. She did not scold me. She only said, "Okay, we make a plan." Maybe I drop by on biscuit days. My doctor is kind. He has serious eyes and soft hands. At my checkup, he listened to my lungs and then to my words. I told him I had been a little unsteady. He looked at the numbers on his paper, then at me. "I want you to have more support at home," he said. "Not because you can't do things, but because you shouldn't do them alone." The word support sat with me like a guest I was not sure how to entertain. The children noticed small things because they were looking for them. Eric picked up a pill bottle and frowned a little. "Mom, maybe we should set a schedule for your pills." I smiled and said, "I take them with breakfast. I always have." He nodded, but his eyes kept measuring my kitchen the way a carpenter checks a shelf. Paula opened the pantry and hummed in a thoughtful way. "We could make this easier," she said. "Maybe put the heavy things on the lower shelf." I said yes, because there is no harm in a lower shelf. She moved a few things around, including the honey I reach for every morning. I learned to reach left instead of right. It was a small thing, but I noticed it. Small changes make a room feel like someone visited while you were sleeping. June called from her car one evening, the sound of wipers in the background. "Let me swing by after work this week, okay?" I said, "Of course, dear." She did not swing by. She texted the next day with a small apology and 3 heart emojis. I wrote back a small heart too. It is a kind thing to send, even when there is no time. At Sunday dinner, Eric watched the stove as if it might do a trick. He said he would get a gadget that turns it off after a certain time. Paula brought a chart she made by hand with my medication listed in tidy boxes. "This is for me," she said, and I believed her. But I also felt the air shift. I wondered if I was getting smaller in my own kitchen. It felt like I could fit into a pocket. Dinner was still good. The roast was a little dry, but the gravy covered it with love like a blanket. The children ate quickly. One of my grandsons wanted to show a video on a phone, and we all bent over it and smiled. It was nice, and yet time seemed to leak out of the room the way steam leaves a pot. When they left, I stood on the porch and waved until the car turned the corner. The house grew quiet again, not in a bad way, but in a way that made me hear my own breath. The wind chime by the porch sang when the wind was kind. It sounded like a memory of laughter. I would sit in Thomas's chair sometimes in the evening and listen to the radio play a song we danced to once in our small kitchen. We never were good dancers, but we were brave ones. I held the arm of the chair with one hand and my heart with the other. One afternoon, Lena knocked, holding a carton of eggs and a smile. "Noah broke 2, but we still have plenty," she said. She set them on my counter and looked around with a nurse's eye, quick but not sharp. "Do you need milk?" she asked. I opened the fridge and checked. "Yes," I said, and she nodded as if she had already bought it. We sat and sipped tea, and she told me about a woman she cared for who loved polka dots and carried a coin purse with pictures of her cat. On Thursdays, if Lena's shift ended early, she would sit on the garden bench with me. We watched the marigolds nod and the bees choose. Noah would kick a ball against the curb and show off a little without meaning to. "You are getting tall," I told him. He grinned and said, "Mom says I'm part sunflower." It felt good to have laughter in the yard. It reminded me that life still has small parties with only a few guests. I took pride in small things. I sorted my mail and recycled what I did not need. I sharpened a pencil until the point was neat. I wrote my grocery list with care and took it with me in a folded square in my pocket. I asked the young cashier about her day and listened to the answer. I wanted to stay a person in the world, not just a list of needs. There were days I felt tired in a way that sleep did not fix. I told myself it was the weather, or the way the light leaned in winter. On those days, I warmed soup and ate it at the table with a napkin on my lap, the way my mother taught me. I read a few pages of a book and smiled when I recognized an old line, like hearing from a friend. I accepted that I moved slower now. I tried to be patient with my own body. I did not know then where those small hints were leading. I only knew that I wanted to hold on to my days the way you hold a good book, gently, but with both hands. I wanted my home to feel like mine. I wanted to step into each room and greet it by name. When the phone rang and a child's voice asked if I needed anything, I often said, "No, I'm fine." It was true in part. It was also my way of keeping my world steady for one more day. Another Sunday came, and I set out the plates with little chips along the edges. Eric arrived with his careful eyes. Paula brought a salad so colorful it looked like confetti. June came late with a bouquet wrapped in paper and her hair still damp from a shower. Daniel carried the baby in a carrier and smiled with his tired eyes. We ate. We laughed at the baby's tiny sneeze. Then they stood up almost at the same time, and I watched them gather their things like a small parade in reverse. "Call us if you need anything," Eric said at the door. "We'll come right away." I nodded. I believed he meant it. I also knew he had a meeting on Monday morning and a budget on his mind. June squeezed my hand. "Next week I'll come by just me," she whispered. I kissed her cheek. "I'd like that," I said. I watched her walk down the steps, and I wondered if the week would open wide enough to let her in. After everyone left, I wiped the table slowly and listened to the wind chime. The house held our voices for a little while and then let them go. The clock ticked in the hallway like it always had. I put the plates away and sat down with my tea. I felt grateful for the quiet and a little lonely in it too. I held both feelings at once and saw that they could live in the same room without fighting. At night, I sometimes dreamed of the library. I dreamed of shelves that reached high and a small cart with a squeaky wheel. In my dream, I pushed the cart down the aisle and placed each book back in its right place. When I woke, I felt calm, because finding the right place for things has always made me feel strong. I know now that those days were the last soft days before a harder season, but at the time, they were just days, full of tea and radio and the marigolds nodding their orange heads. I was not ready to be looked at like a problem to be solved. I was still a person who could choose between honey and jam. I wanted to be seen that way for as long as I could be. The changes did not come like a storm. They came like a thread being tugged at the edge of a sweater. I did not notice the first pull. Then I felt a tiny gap where there had been warmth before. Each small thing seemed helpful on its own. Together, they made my house feel like it belonged to someone I did not know. Paula came one afternoon with a neat bag. Inside, there was a large plastic box with 7 lids, one for each day. She set it on the table and said, "This will make your pills easier." I smiled and sat beside her. She took each bottle, checked the label twice, and placed the pills in tidy rows that looked like little white beads. When she finished, she picked up the box and walked to the kitchen. She reached high and put it on the top shelf of the cabinet above the stove. I watched her hands, and then my eyes went to the shelf. "Paula," I said gently, "I won't be able to reach that." She nodded without looking at me. "That's the point. I'll come each week to refill it and you won't mix anything up." I stood up and reached my hand toward the shelf just to see. My fingertips touched the wood, not the plastic. It made sense in a clean way, but something inside me tugged again, a small pull I could not name. I poured tea for both of us and asked if she wanted honey. "No, thanks," she said, looking at her watch. "I have to pick up Trent from practice." I nodded. "Thank you for doing this," I told her. I meant it. And yet I still saw the top shelf every time I walked into the kitchen. A few days later, Eric held my car keys in his hand and turned them over like he was reading a book. He had not asked where they were. He had reached into the little bowl by the door where I always kept them. "Mom," he said, holding the keys gently, "I'm going to take these for a bit." I felt my chest get tight the way it does when the weather turns and you are not ready for it. "For safety," he added, as if that word could make it easier. "We can talk about driving again later, but for now I feel better if you let me hold on to them." I looked at his face. It was kind and it was decided. I could see the little boy who used to check the doors twice at night. "I only drive to the market and church," I said softly. He nodded. "We'll get you there," he said, "just not by yourself." The bowl by the door looked empty without the keys. It looked like a mouth missing a tooth. I ran my finger around the rim and reminded myself that a car is a machine, not a life. Still, the next morning when the sun was bright and the marigolds looked like bells, I missed the feeling of choosing to go. I missed the sound a door makes when it closes behind you and you hold your own handle. June brought groceries on a Thursday. She carried in 3 bags and set them on the counter with a sigh. "Let me put these away for you," she said, already unbagging. I stood nearby with my hands folded. She lined up things I had not asked for: almond milk, a big tub of thick yogurt, a bag of something called quinoa that looked like tiny pearls, and a box of crackers with seeds and words like ancient grain. I smiled and thanked her. I put one hand on the box of cereal I usually eat and then moved it aside to make room. "You should try this," she said, opening the pantry and moving jars. "It's good for energy." She placed the new things at eye level and slid my jar of peanut butter to the back corner. The pantry looked full of strangers. Later, when she left, I made toast and spread the honey I had to reach for on the second shelf. It tasted familiar. I wondered if everything that is good for us has to be new. At the end of that week, Eric came over with a laptop under his arm and a folder full of papers. He took a seat at the table like a person settling in for a long puzzle. "We need to make things easier," he said, in a voice that did not invite questions. He opened the folder and slid a few pages toward me. "Just sign so we can help pay your bills online." I picked up the top paper. The words were small, the lines were long. "Tell me what this means," I said, even though I could guess. "It just lets me log in and take care of things," he said. "Like the utilities, and the mortgage is gone, but we still have property tax, right?" I nodded. He touched the screen and showed me a page with numbers. "I'm just trying to take this off your plate." My plate had never felt heavy, but I remembered the slide on the kitchen floor. I remembered the light on in the oven. I looked at my son and saw his worry standing there like a person beside him. I hesitated. I looked at the signature line. Thomas used to say, "If you don't understand it, ask." So I asked again. "Will this make it so only you can do the bills?" He shook his head. "No, Mom, we both can. I'll just be helping." I reached for a pen. It felt heavier than usual. I put my name where he pointed. I signed 3 pages, maybe 4. I did not read every line. I trusted my son. When I was finished, he smiled a little and closed the folder. We had tea then, and he told me about a project at work that was going sideways. I listened. I did not tell him that my hands trembled for a long time afterward. More changes came, practical and tidy. The stovetop was fitted with clear plastic covers that made the knobs hard to turn. "So they don't bump on by accident," Paula said. A man from a store brought a metal guard that covered the front of the stove. It had a lock I could not see. "So no one leans against it and gets burned," Paula added, touching my arm. I nodded, and later I stood in front of it with a pot in my hand and felt like a child looking for permission. The heavy rug in the living room, the one with the soft blue pattern Thomas and I picked out, was rolled up and carried to the garage. "Trip hazard," Eric said. The room looked bigger and empty at the same time. My favorite chair, the one by the window where the light is good in the afternoon, was moved to the corner to give space for a walker. I did not use a walker. The chair looked like a person told to stand facing the wall. Paula unplugged my old radio, the one with a dial that glowed like a firefly. "This keeps losing stations," she said. She took a small box out of a bag and placed it on the counter. "This can do everything. You just say, 'Play the Beatles' or 'What's the weather?' and it talks back." She plugged it in and it lit up like an eye. I tried it when she left. "Play Perry Como," I said. It misunderstood and started a song with drums so loud it made me jump. I pressed all the buttons until it went quiet. I put a towel over it like it was a bird in a cage. We had a conversation at the table with the papers still stacked in the folder. It was about a temporary stay. Paula folded her hands and spoke calmly. "Just a little while," she said. "You'll have people around all the time." She smiled at me the way a nurse smiles at someone in a waiting room, gentle, practiced. I looked at my garden through the window. The marigolds were bright, and the wind chime was ready for the wind to speak. "But I have people here," I said softly. "I have my garden." Eric reached over and touched my wrist. "It's just until we figure things out," he said. He always liked making a plan. He always liked the feeling of a puzzle piece sliding into place. We did not shout. I did not cry. I looked at the cupboard with the medicine box on the top shelf. I looked at the bowl by the door with no keys. I saw how a house can become a plan and a person can become a list. I told myself I could do anything for a little while. The day of the move was bright and strange. The dogwood tree in the front yard was in bloom, small white flowers like open hands. A van pulled up to the curb with a careful driver who carried boxes marked with thick black letters. "Kitchen," one box said. "Bedroom," said another. There were boxes I had not packed. I was not sure who had filled them. Paula moved quickly, labeling and directing. Eric spoke with the driver about the route. June ran up the steps with a bag of toiletries and hugged me tight. "I packed your lotion," she said. "The one that smells like orange." I thanked her. My eyes went to the bench near the garden. Thomas had built it. The wood caught the sun like it was waking up. Lena saw the van and was out her door before I could lift my hand to wave. She walked over in her work shoes and stopped at the edge of the porch, looking at my face. "Do you want me to come with you?" she asked. Her voice was steady, the kind that holds you up without touching you. I wanted to say yes the way a thirsty person wants water. I looked at Eric and Paula moving like a tidy machine. I looked at Lena, who had soup in my fridge, and a boy who mowed my lawn. "Thank you, dear," I said, keeping my voice even, "but I don't want to be a problem." Her eyes said she understood more than my words. She squeezed my hand once quick, like a note passed in class. "Call me," she said softly. "Anytime." Noah stood by the dogwood with his hands in his pockets. He looked at the van and then at me. "I can carry that," he said, pointing at a small box with a blanket inside. Paula shook her head. "The movers will handle it." He nodded and stepped back, his face trying to be brave. I wanted to hand him something, anything, just to feel like I was still giving. I walked through my house one more time. I touched the wall by the kitchen where years ago we marked the height of the children with pencil. The lines faded but were still there. I pressed my palm against them as if I could push them back into the wood. In the living room, the empty place where the rug had been made my footsteps sound louder. I stood by the chair in the corner and whispered, "I'll be back," though I did not know if that was true. The ride to Briarwood Pines was quiet. Paula drove. Eric sat in the front checking his phone. June sat beside me and held my hand like we were on a boat that might rock. I watched houses pass and tried to count them. I lost track. We turned into a driveway with a sign that had a pinecone carved on it. The building was neat and the windows looked like eyes that were always open. Inside, the air smelled like lemon cleaner and something warm from the kitchen. The automatic doors breathed open and then closed behind us. A woman at the desk smiled and said my name. She handed me a welcome packet and a pen and asked me to write down my favorite foods. I wrote toast with honey and felt silly and safe at the same time. A young man brought a soft blanket and draped it over my shoulders. It was a nice gesture. It made me feel like someone had already decided I was cold. Nurse Maria arrived then, with kind eyes and a name tag that had a small sunflower sticker on it. "We'll take good care of you," she said, and I believed she meant it, the way a nurse says something and means it as a promise to herself. My room had a window that faced a parking lot. I could see the tops of cars like tiny boats and the big sky above them. The bed was neatly made and had rails that could be raised, but they were down for now. There was a dresser with 3 drawers and a chair that did not look like mine. The wall was bare, waiting for a picture. We sat together for a little while. Eric checked a few forms and signed where the nurse pointed. Paula asked about the meal times and the medication schedule. June helped me put a photo of Thomas on the dresser, propping it up with a book because the frame did not stand on its own. Then it was time for them to go. The goodbye was soft and careful, as if they were leaving a sleeping child. When the door clicked shut, the room hummed with a new kind of quiet. I took the blanket off my shoulders and folded it neatly at the foot of the bed. I opened the top drawer and placed my things inside with slow hands. A hairbrush, a small jar of cream, the orange-scented lotion June had brought. I moved them around until it looked like a drawer I would know in the dark. The first days I tried to be agreeable. I learned the schedule: breakfast at 8, exercise class at 10, quilting in the afternoon for those with nimble fingers. I went to the dining room and held my tray like everyone else. I sat with a woman named Lorraine who loved detective shows and a man named Bill who said, "Now, listen," before every story. I smiled a lot. I said thank you every time someone poured my water. Calls from Eric became quick. "Just checking, Mom," he'd say. "We'll stop by soon." He sounded busy, and he always was. June sent texts with hearts and a picture of the kids holding a sign that said, "Hi, Nana." Paula asked about forms I had seen and forms I had not. "Did they give you the advance directive packet?" she asked. I told her I thought so. I did not know where it was. One afternoon, as the sun made a big rectangle on the floor by my bed, I heard Eric's voice outside my door. He was talking on his phone in a work voice. "We'll list it in 2 weeks," he said. "We need to move fast." His footsteps were quick in the hall. I sat very still and looked at the photo of Thomas with his fish. My chest felt hollow the way a gourd does after the seeds are taken out. The next day, a message came from Paula. "We've hired cleaners to clear out the basement. Hope that's okay." She added a smile I could not hear. I put my phone face down on the blanket for a moment and then picked it up again. I typed, "What about Thomas's tools? What about the bench?" The dots bounced for a while like a breath that did not know where to land. "Eric says we can store some things," she wrote back, "but we have to be smart about space." I thought of the workbench Thomas had built, with the small drawers he labeled with a pencil. I thought of the hammer with the worn handle that fit his hand. I thought of the piano in the living room where June had learned Twinkle. Twinkle, and then real songs. I felt a slow ache begin in the middle of me. When Eric called that evening, I took a breath before I answered. "I thought this was temporary," I said. The words came out gentle, like a question, even though I meant them as a statement. There was a pause on the line. I could hear him rubbing his forehead, a sound I knew without seeing it. "It is, Mom," he said. It's just complicated. Complicated is a big word that can hide many small ones. It can hide mortgage and budget and time and hard. It can hide we didn't think this far and we think we are doing the right thing and we are afraid. I did not fight the word. I held it and felt its edges. Okay, I said. I hear you. We talked a little more about the weather and the garden. He asked if I needed anything. I said no. June texted me on Friday. I'll come Sunday, I promise. I put the phone on the table and smiled at those words. I imagined making tea in the paper cup they give you here. I imagined sitting by the window and watching her walk in, wrapped in that lemony smell she has after a shower. On Sunday, I put on a soft sweater and sat in the chair by the window. I watched other families arrive with flowers and cookies. I kept looking at the door. Around 3, my phone buzzed. I'm so sorry, Mom, June wrote. Lucy has a fever, we can't come. She added a heart and a crying face. I typed, give her a kiss for me, and added a heart back. Then I put the phone down and folded my sweater tighter around me. A nurse walked by and asked if I wanted tea. Yes, please, I said. When she brought it, I did not drink it until it cooled. Days took on a shape that belonged to the building. The hallways had a rhythm of footfalls and carts. The TV in the lounge played the same morning show, the one with cheerful people who never grew tired. At night, the lights dimmed and the nurses' shoes made soft squeaks like whispers. Someone down the hall called a name that did not have a person to answer anymore. I closed my eyes and counted breaths. Once, Mrs. Blanchard, the social worker, came in with a clipboard and a friendly smile. She asked me about my favorite hobbies and whether I liked being called Ms. Evelyn or just Evelyn. She asked if I had a church and if I wanted a visit from the pastor who came on Thursdays. She explained the call button again and the little alarm they had attached to my bracelet to alert them if I went for a walk without telling anyone. It's for your safety, she said. The words were as familiar as my name by then. I tried to make the room mine. I asked for a small plant for the window. I brought a pinch of soil from my garden in a tiny soap dish and pressed my thumb into it. I taped a picture of the marigolds to the wall. I put Thomas's photo a little to the left so he could see the door, the way he liked to sit at restaurants. These were little things, but they were mine. I talked to Lena on the phone in the evenings. She told me about a patient who loved bird songs and another who always wore red socks. I told her about Lorraine and Bill and the way the pudding was always either too thick or too thin, never just right. I asked her if the dogwood was still blooming. Yes, she said. It looks like it's clapping. When I slept, I dreamed about rooms that moved like ships. I dreamed about walking down the hallway at home and opening a door to find a kitchen that was not mine, with a smart speaker blinking and a radio nowhere to be seen. In these dreams, I did not feel lost. I felt like a patient waiting for her name to be called. One afternoon, Paula sent another message. We're getting estimates on a new water heater at your house, she wrote. It makes no sense to put money into a place you won't be in. The words were careful, as if they were walking on ice. I called her. Are you selling the house? I asked. I kept my voice even. There was a pause and then a sigh. We're looking at options, she said. I hung up and looked at the wall. I imagined the basement, cool and smelling like earth, with boxes labeled in Thomas's neat print. I thought of the old trunk from my mother, the one with the quilt that had squares like postage stamps. I could not go there. I could only sit and hold those rooms in my mind. It felt like trying to carry water in my hands. The next time Eric visited, we sat in the sunroom with large windows and plastic plants. He looked tired. I put my hand on his and patted it once, the way my mother used to do for me. I know you're trying, I said. He looked up, surprised. We are, he said. It's just a lot. I nodded. I did not tell him that the lot was me. He told me about the realtor and the timing and the market and words that sounded like math. I listened until the numbers felt like a hum. What about the piano? I asked. His face softened. We'll find a place for it, he said. He meant it in that moment. I pressed my lips together and looked down. The piano had sat in that corner for 40 years. It had seen birthdays and recitals and dust. It had a sound when its lid opened that felt like a person waking up. I went back to my room and wrote a list on a small pad of paper. Bench, tools, piano, photo albums. I underlined each word. I added wind chime. Then I put the paper in the drawer under the hairbrush, as if the drawer could hold them all safe. I told myself a list is a plan. I told myself I was still the captain of small things. Sunday came again. I did not expect a visit. I put on my sweater anyway. I sat by the window and watched the parking lot like it was a dock. Cars pulled in. People got out with flowers and balloons. They walked toward the doors with intention, like sailors who knew their way. I watched them the way you watch ships go where you cannot. June texted a picture of Lucy eating a popsicle on the couch. "She's better," she wrote. "I'll come next week." I sent back a thumbs up and a heart. I looked at the photo of Thomas and I said out loud, "We made good children," as if he were in the room to hear me. I believed it as I said it. I still do. Nurse Maria came in with a small vase and a daisy in it. "From the activity room," she said. "They had extra." I smiled and put it on the table. "Thank you," I said. She looked at me, and the look said she knew the difference between a daisy and a daughter. She adjusted the blanket at the foot of my bed and reminded me about bingo at 4. That afternoon, I walked slowly to the activity room. Lorraine waved me over with her hand. Bill said, "Now listen," and told a story about a fishing trip where he had not caught anything but sun. I held a cardboard card and small round chips. When they called B12, I laughed and said, "That's my vitamin." The room laughed with me. It felt good to have a joke that belonged to no one. Later, alone in my room, I checked my phone out of habit. There was a voicemail I had missed. Eric's voice, low and businesslike. "Mom, the photographer is coming on Tuesday to take pictures of the house. Don't worry, we'll stage it nicely. It'll show well. We'll list it in 2 weeks. We need to move fast." He had not meant for me to feel a certain way. I did anyway. I called him back. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Hi, Mom," he said, and I could hear the hum of an office behind him. "Are you all right?" I asked. It was the question I always asked first. "Yes," he said. "Everything okay there?" I took a breath. "I'm doing fine," I said. "I just wanted to ask you about the house again." He paused. "We'll talk about it this weekend," he said. "It's just complicated." After we hung up, I placed the phone face down. I stood up slowly and walked to the window. The parking lot was less busy. The sky held the color of evening. I put my hand against the glass. It felt cool and steady. I whispered, "I am here," as if the glass might tell the room, and the room might tell the building, and someone would write it down. On the table, the daisy tilted its face toward the light. I turned the smart speaker so it faced the wall. I plugged in the old radio I had insisted on bringing, and the reception was poor, but the sound was mine. A song came through the static, a song Thomas liked. I closed my eyes and listened to the old voice and the old melody, and I felt the small boat of myself steady just a bit in the strange water. Nurse Maria brought my tea that afternoon the way she always did, with a gentle knock and a smile that reached her eyes. She set the cup on the little table by my bed and straightened the corner of the blanket as if that small square could comfort me. "How are we today, Ms. Evelyn?" she asked. "A little tired," I said, and she nodded like she knew what kind of tired I meant. She left the door open a little so I could hear the hallway. The hallway has its own music. It is the sound of wheels on tile and quiet voices asking simple questions. I sipped my tea and watched the sunlight move across the floor. It was a calm afternoon. It felt like nothing would happen because nothing ever did. But then I heard my son's voice. It came from around the corner near the nursing station. "Yes, that's correct," Eric was saying. His voice was polite and clipped, his work voice. "Please list me as the only contact." My hand paused halfway to my mouth. I set the cup down carefully, as if the tea might spill some truth I did not want to see. The woman at the desk said something I could not catch. Eric continued, "And if we can limit visitors just for a while." "I think that's best. It's for Mom's rest." There was a soft murmur, papers shuffling, then a line quieter. "She doesn't know what's best for her anymore." The words were not said to hurt, but they pushed like a thumb on a bruise. I stood very still behind the open door, not wanting to make a sound. I could picture him leaning on the counter, his brow folded, the way it does when he is trying to press the world into order. Paula's voice cut in, softer, whiter. "We just don't want to overwhelm her," she added. The nurse at the desk made a gentle sound that could have meant anything. I could not see any faces, but I felt mine heat up. I did not step into the hall. I did not say, "I am here." I went back to my bed and sat down. I picked up the cup again, and the tea had gone cool. It tasted thinner than before. I held the handle with both hands and stared at the window. Cars moved in and out of the parking lot, doing their own simple work. Life went on, even when a sentence can change the shape of your day. That evening, the hallway grew quiet the way hallways do. The air smelled like soap and something sweet from dinner. When the lights dimmed, my room felt very neat. The blanket felt heavier than usual, as if it remembered every hand that had ever tucked it. I lay on my back and watched the ceiling, and I thought about words. Words can be soft, and still they can cut. I turned on my side and looked at the little photo of Thomas on the dresser. "Do I know what's best for me?" I asked the room. It did not answer, but it held me the way a room does, with a certain kind of faith. I thought of my garden. I thought of Lena's knock on my old door, the easy way she stepped inside and checked my milk. I thought of the day my keys went missing from their bowl. I slept in patches. Dreams came and went like planes too far away to hear. At one point, I sat up and swung my legs over the side of the bed. My feet found the coldness of the floor. I did not go anywhere. I just sat with the dark, and I tried to see something inside it. I told myself a little sentence in my head: I will not disappear inside my own life. In the morning, I did the small things. I folded my sweater and placed it on the chair. I brushed my hair and leaned close to the mirror so I could see the woman I still was. I went to breakfast and ate oatmeal I did not love. I talked about the weather with Lorraine. I nodded when Bill said, "Now, listen," and told his story about a cat that did not exist. I kept my small boat steady. Sunday came with its special quiet. Families arrived in the late morning, their arms full of flowers and soft jackets. I watched them from my room, not bitter, just seeing. Around noon, there was a knock at my door, gentle, as if it did not want to wake a baby. I said, "Come in," and the door opened like a page turning. Lena stood there with a small bunch of daisies in a jar and a photo in her hand. "I printed this at the pharmacy," she said, holding up the picture. It was my garden, the marigolds bright as coins. The dogwood tree stood in bloom behind them. She placed the jar on my table and held the photo out to me. "For your wall," she said softly. I took the picture and felt my throat close in a kind way. "Thank you," I said. "You brought my yard to me." She smiled and sat down in the chair by the bed. "How are you?" she asked, not as a formality but as a real question. I looked at her face. It did not ask anything from me. It only made space. I told her about my week. I told her the funny parts first, like Bill and his imaginary cat. I told her about the pudding, thick as paste. Then I told her about the hallway, about my son and the words I heard. I did not add anything to those words. I did not try to soften them. I just said them and let them sit between us. She listened without blinking, the way nurses learn to do. After a moment, she reached for my hand. Her fingers were warm from carrying the jar. "If you want help, I'll help," she said. She spoke in a simple, steady voice. "I won't push. I won't decide for you. You tell me what you want and we make a plan." The breath I did not know I had been holding left my body. Tears came before I could stop them. I put my hand to my mouth. "I am sorry," I said, because I was raised to say sorry for tears. She squeezed my fingers. "Don't be," she whispered. "Let them come if they need to come." I cried for a little while, quietly, the way a kettle lets off steam. When I was done, I felt lighter and more present, as if I had opened a window. We talked for a long time. The afternoon moved across the floor, and we did not rush. I told her I wanted my voice back. I told her I wanted to choose who called the nurse when I pressed a button and who held my papers. I told her I wanted my home to be treated like a life, not a place to empty. I spoke slowly because the words felt new, but they fit. She nodded and listened. "I know a person," she said at last. "His name is Mr. Howard. I met him through work. He helps older folks with what you're talking about. He is a kind man and he speaks in plain words. If you want, I can ask him to come here to meet you in the visiting room. He won't charge you for talking. He wants people to understand." I thought of lawyers as tall men with sharp suits and papers like snow. I looked at Lena's calm face and the way she held her shoulders. "Yes," I said. "Ask him to come. I want to talk to someone who will not call me a problem to be solved." She nodded. "I'll call him tomorrow," she said. "We'll go step by step." After she left, I pinned the garden photo to the wall with a small tack and a small prayer. I looked at the marigolds and the dogwood and let their color fill the room. That night, I slept without the heavy feeling. I woke once and said out loud, "I am not gone," just to hear my own voice in the dark. It sounded sure and small and beautiful. 2 days later, Mr. Howard came at 10 in the morning. He was not tall and his suit was not sharp. He wore a soft jacket and carried a leather bag that had been mended. His hair was gray at the edges, and his eyes were the kind people get when they have read a lot and listened more. He shook my hand and said, "Ms. Evelyn, thank you for seeing me. I'm Howard, but please call me Mr. Howard if that feels respectful. I work for you if you want me to, not the other way around." We sat in the visiting room with the plastic plants and the candy jar no one touched. Lena sat beside me, quiet, not speaking for me. Mr. Howard placed a small notebook on the table and a pen. He did not open a laptop. "Tell me what you want," he said. "Not what anyone else says is best. What do you want?" I looked at him and took a breath. "I want to choose who cares for me," I said. "I want to protect my home and the savings Thomas and I built. I do not want to be moved through my own life like a package. I want to be part of every decision that has my name on it." My words were simple, but they came out with a strength I had not used in a while. He nodded, as if each sentence had a weight he could feel. "All right," he said. "I can help you make papers that say those things in a way people must follow. But before I tell you how, I need to see what has already been signed." I brought out the folder Eric had organized, the one with tabs and neat post-its. I laid it on the table like a dish I hoped was enough. Mr. Howard put on glasses and went through each page with slow care. He did not sigh. He did not frown. He wrote small notes to himself that looked like tiny fences. "Some of this gives your son a lot of power," he said gently. "Some of it is fine but vague." He looked up. "You have the right to change who can speak for you and how they can speak. You have the right to name more than one person. You have the right to be heard." "Can I take things back?" I asked. "Some things," he said. "Some things we add to instead, some we make clearer. We can also make new papers that will move the center of the decisions back to you." He looked at Lena. "Are you here to help, not to gain?" She met his eyes. "I am here to help," she said. He nodded, satisfied. He explained in plain words what could be done. "We can write a paper that says you, Ms. Evelyn, choose who can talk to doctors and nurses. We can tell the home to change their contact if that is your wish. We can also put your house and savings in a place with rules. You can decide what those rules are. Who uses the money? In what order? What happens after you die? You can choose Lena if you trust her to carry those rules." I looked at my hands. I saw the shape of my mother's hands there. "If I put my house in her name," I said, careful, "does that mean I lose it?" He shook his head. "It means you set a path. If the path says, this house is to be used to care for Evelyn first in every way she needs, then the rest goes to these places. Then that is what must happen. The papers make it so. She would be responsible to follow that and could be held to it." "What if I change my mind?" I asked. "Can I change the papers again?" He smiled a little. "We can write papers that let you make changes as long as you are able. We will also write a note today from the social worker that says your mind is steady. That will help people listen later. We will do this carefully. We will not rush." Lena sat very still, her hands folded. She did not look at me with big eyes. She did not urge. She only waited. I looked at her and saw every time she had stood on my porch at the end of a hard day and said, "Do you need milk?" I saw Noah pulling my trash cans back to the side of the house without being asked. I saw the soup cooling on my counter and the way she always put the spoon on a plate so it would not drip. "I want Lena to be the one," I said. "I want the house and the savings to be in her name with clear rules written down. I want her to pay for my care and keep me safe. After I am gone, I want what remains to go to 2 places. First, a scholarship at the library for children in the summer reading program. Second, a small emergency fund for Lena and Noah as thanks for their kindness. I want that written in a way no one can twist later." Mr. Howard wrote each of those points in his small, neat print. "We can do that," he said. "We will make a little trust or a deed with those rules. We will update your will to say the same. We will ask Mrs. Blanchard to be our witness that you understand each step. A notary will bring a stamp. We will also ask the home to update their records to make Lena your primary contact if you wish. We will put your wishes in writing in several places so they can't be ignored." "Will this hurt my children?" I asked. It was the hardest sentence to say. He waited before he answered. "It will change what they expected," he said. "It will not take away love unless someone lets it. It will tell a different story about what you are choosing, safety, dignity, care, and a legacy you decide. It is your right to make that choice." "What if Lena gets sick?" I asked. "Or has to move away?" He nodded. "Then the papers will say who steps in next. We will name a second person. It could be Mr. Howard's office in a limited way, just to make sure the rules are followed, not to take over your life. It could be the church. It could be someone else you trust. We will not leave a blank space." I thought for a long moment. I felt calm, not happy, not sad, just calm. "All right," I said. "Let us do this." Mr. Howard smiled softly. "We will go slowly," he said. "We will not skip any steps." He came back 2 days later with papers and a woman with a neat bun who carried a notary stamp. Mrs. Blanchard joined us with her clipboard. She looked at me with those careful social worker eyes that are trained to see fog and clear skies both. "I just need to ask you a few things," she said. "Who is the president? What month is it? And where are we today?" I answered each question. Then I said, "And I am here by choice." She wrote that down too. Mr. Howard went through each paper sentence by sentence. He did not rush. He explained what each sentence meant and asked me to say it back to him in my own words. When I stumbled, he rephrased. When I nodded, he waited and asked, "Tell me what you are saying yes to." I felt respected in a way I had not felt in months. I signed my name in slow, careful loops. I put my initials on small lines where my initials were needed. The notary stamped with a quiet thump that felt like a seal on a letter. I held the pen between my fingers and took a breath after each signature. It felt like placing stones in a row to make a path across a stream. When we were done, he gave me copies in a folder with my name on it. He gave a copy to Lena. He said he would file what needed to be filed and call the home to help me change my contact. "We will do that now together," he said, pointing to the hallway. "It is good to do hard things when you are strong." We walked to the nurse's desk, the three of us. Mr. Howard spoke with Mrs. Blanchard and the head nurse. He used soft words. "Ms. Evelyn would like to update her primary contact to Ms. Lena," he said. The head nurse looked at me. "Is that right, Ms. Evelyn?" she asked. I met her eyes. "Yes," I said. "Please write it down." They made copies of the paper we carried and placed one in my file. They asked me to initial a small form. I held the pen steady. It felt like a small bell sounding softly in a quiet church. A moment later, they told me it was done. "Is there anything else?" the head nurse asked. "Yes," I said. "Please do not limit my visitors unless I say so. I want to see who I want to see." She nodded. "We will honor that," she said. Back in my room, Lena sat with me on the edge of the bed. "You did a brave thing," she said. "You did it with grace." I nodded and stared at my hands. "I did it with you," I said. We laughed, a small laugh that felt like a shared secret. Mr. Howard packed up his bag and said, "I will call you tomorrow to check on your heart." He tapped his chest when he said heart, not his head. I noticed that and liked it. That evening, I wrote 2 letters. I used the good paper, the one with tiny flowers along the edge. I addressed one to Eric and one to June. I took my time. I held each word for a moment before I let it go. I did not scold. I did not accuse. I wrote the truth as I knew it, in a voice that could be folded and opened without tearing. "Dear Eric," I began, "and dear Paula." I told them that I love them. I told them I heard the care under their plan and the fear inside it. I told them I need to be more than a plan. I wrote the sentence that had been blooming in me all week. "I love you. I am not a burden. I choose safety and dignity. If you want a relationship with me, it will be for me, not for my things." I underlined nothing. I trusted the sentences to stand on their own legs. In June's letter, I wrote much the same. I added, "I see how tired you are. I remember being tired when you were small. Come see me when you can, not when you feel you must. I still want to hear about your day." I sealed the envelopes and wrote their names in a careful hand. I asked the nurse at the desk to place them in the outgoing mail. She smiled and said she would. The next morning, Mr. Howard called the nursing home doctor with me present. He handed me the phone when needed. "Would you like to select a different primary doctor, Ms. Evelyn?" the voice asked. "Yes," I said. "I would like to continue with Dr. Patel, my doctor from before. He knows me." The voice told me that was possible. Papers would be signed. Appointments would be arranged. It all sounded like rain on a roof, steady, familiar, not alarming. Lena and I sat with Mrs. Blanchard again to adjust my care plan. We looked at the schedule. We added a weekly call to check what I needed from me to them, not them to me. We wrote down that I keep my phone at all times, charged and near. We wrote down that I like toast with honey and that I may have it in the evening if I want. I did not know I could write such a thing in a plan, but I could, and so we did. A small kindness came that day like a note slipped under a door. Nurse Maria brought my tea. But this time she set it down and looked at me with a new light in her eyes. "Ms. Evelyn," she said, with a little smile that held something more than kindness. It held respect. She had always been kind. But now something had shifted in the way she said my name. It was as if she saw me not just as a room number, but as a person with a story she admired. "Thank you," I said to her. She tilted her head. "For what?" she asked. "For seeing me," I said. She nodded, and I could tell she understood. Sometimes the best people understand without needing a long speech. She adjusted my pillow and asked, "Do you want lemon with your tea?" I said yes, and she brought a little slice on a napkin with a smile. I called Lena that evening from the chair by the window. "How are you?" she asked. "I feel like I put my name on my own life," I said. "It feels like when you label a jar and you know what's inside." She laughed softly. "That's a good way to put it," she said. "You labeled your jar. Now everyone else has to read it before they take a spoon." I slept well in a deeper kind of way. The room did not feel like a box anymore. It felt like a place where I had hung a picture and said, "This is mine." I woke in the night and did not feel lost. I felt placed. I whispered, "Thank you, Thomas." Even though I knew this choice was mine, I still felt him beside me in some quiet way, like a hand on my shoulder as I walked down an unfamiliar street. The next day, Mrs. Blanchard stopped by with a short note she had typed. It said that she had met with me, that I understood my choices, that I made them freely, and that I had a steady mind. She asked me to read it and then to sign it. "This is just to help," she said. "It tells people that you are here, clear and strong." I signed my name and felt again that soft thump of something being made solid. At lunch, Lorraine asked me why I was smiling into my soup. "You look like you remembered a joke," she said. "Maybe I did," I said. "Or maybe I got to decide something today." She laughed, that kind of laugh older women have when they know exactly what you mean. "Hold on to that," she said. "Hold on even when the spoon clatters." I took a slow walk down the hallway with my hand on the rail. The pictures on the walls looked brighter. The board with the week's activities seemed like an invitation, not a schedule. I signed up for the book club on Thursday. I put my name down with a pen that had a sunflower taped to the end. It made me smile. Later, I sat with Lena in the small courtyard that Briarwood keeps for fresh air. We watched a little sparrow hop along the edge of a raised bed. "Do you think you'll come to my house on Sunday for tea one day soon?" she asked. "When it is safe and the doctor says yes." I looked at the sky and thought about leaving the automatic doors, even for an hour. "Yes," I said. "I would like that. I would like that very much." She told me then that Noah had put my wind chime in their yard for now. "He said he didn't want the silence at your house to be the last thing the chime heard," she said. I pictured it moving and singing in new air. It comforted me more than I expected. "Tell him thank you," I said. "Tell him I can hear it from here." She looked at me and nodded, as if she could hear it too. Word came that the house was being photographed, that boxes were being sorted. It did not hit me like a wave anymore. It came like the memory of a song you once sang. I held the papers I had signed. I knew what they meant now. I had put my home on a path I had chosen. I had asked it to care for me once more from a distance. I had given it work to do. Houses like to be useful. I waited for a response to my letters. I did not know what would come or when. I checked the mail bin in the common room each day with a small flutter in my stomach. I looked for my children's handwriting the way I used to look for the mailman on snow days. I practiced the words I would say when they called. I put my hands on the table and promised myself I would stay gentle, even if their voices trembled or rose. When I felt fear come knocking at the edge of my bed, I did not pretend not to hear it. I said, "I hear you." Then I said, "I am not a box to be moved. I am a person with a key." In my mind, I saw the bowl by my old door, empty of the car keys. I imagined placing a small golden key there anyway, one that did not open a car or a door, one that opened a story. It was mine to keep. The next time Eric called, I could hear his heartbeat in his words even over the line. "Mom," he said, and then he stopped, as if mom was a big enough word to fill the space. "I got your letter," he added. I waited. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said, voice low. "I was afraid." I held the phone a little tighter. "I know," I said. "I was afraid too. I still am some days, but I'm making a safe place for that fear to sit without making choices it should not make." He was quiet for a long moment. "Okay," he said. "Okay." He cleared his throat. "I'll come Sunday," he added. "With June if she can, no paperwork, just us." I closed my eyes. "I would like that," I said. We did not talk about the house. We did not talk about money. We talked about the weather and a game he wanted to take Noah to when baseball returned. It was simple, soft talk. It felt like a step onto steady ground. That evening, as the sun lowered itself over the parking lot and turned the cars into little islands of light, I made a cup of tea from my own box, not the one they give from the cart. I poured the hot water and watched the tea swirl like a small storm calming down. There was a knock at my door. It was Nurse Maria with a lemon slice and a small cookie wrapped in a napkin. "For your first quiet win," she said with a smile. I laughed. "You keep track?" I asked. "We all do," she said. "We keep track of the good things as if we were quilting them together." She looked at the garden photo on my wall. "And I see we have a new window today," she added. "Yes," I said, looking at the marigolds. "A window I can carry." When the lights dimmed that night, I felt the heaviness of the blanket in a different way. It was not pressing me down. It was holding me, like a hand on my back saying, "You are here." The dark did not feel too neat anymore. It felt as if a small lamp had been lit inside me and would stay lit even when I closed my eyes. I turned toward the wall where the marigolds were, and I slept with their orange glow in my mind. In the morning, I woke before the gentle knock. I sat up and put my feet on the floor. I said, "Good morning," to the room, as if it could answer back. When the cart came by with breakfast, I asked for toast with honey, and the woman smiled and brought it without question. I spread the honey with slow movements and thought about the sweetness of choosing something simple and getting it. I looked at the folder by the window, the one with my name on it, and I felt a quiet pride. It was not pride that stands on a chair and shouts. It was pride that breathes. It was the feeling of getting a library shelf in order after a long, messy day. My life was not tidy, but I had placed a few books back where they belonged. I do not know everything that will come. I do not know how my children will hold this new shape. I do not know how my days will change when the seasons turn. But I know this. I spoke and someone listened. I wrote my wishes and someone wrote them down. I reached out and a hand met me. That is a turning. That is a point. And sitting there with the toast warm in my hands and the taste of lemon on my tongue, I knew I had stepped through a door I had chosen. I did not slam it. I did not lock it. I simply walked through it and stood on the other side where my own name sounded clear when I said it. I was not a burden. I was not invisible. I was Evelyn and I was seen. The house sold in the end, but not the way people usually tell it. It did not vanish into a sign on the lawn and a handshake. It took time, and it took care. Lena and Mr. Howard walked each step with me, slowly, as if we were carrying a bowl of water we did not want to spill. There were small liens I did not know about, a leftover balance from a roof patch 10 winters ago that Thomas and I meant to finish paying in spring, a fee from the city for a water meter that had been replaced and not marked right in the books. Lena paid them properly from the account Mr. Howard set up for my care. She kept every receipt in a folder and brought them to me. "You don't have to see these," she said, "but I want you to know." I looked anyway. It comforted me to see numbers sit down in their chairs. Before anything left the house, Lena walked through each room with her phone and took gentle pictures. She made a list with my words beside it. "Photo albums," I said. "Bench, tools, piano, wind chime." She added wedding china, and I nodded. She added Afghan on the couch, and I smiled and said, "Yes, the yellow one." Together, we set aside the photos. Every album came out of its shelf like a sleeping book, ready to wake. She placed them in plastic bins with lids that sealed tight. She labeled them with a black marker, EVELYN, family. She wrapped the framed pictures in soft towels so the glass would not crack. She sent me a picture of the bin lids lined up like new roofs. I felt a deep breath move through me. The bench Thomas built was carried down from the garden by 2 strong men who treated it like a person. They placed it in the back of Lena's truck and covered it with a blue blanket. Later, I saw it on Lena's porch, settled under the eaves like it had always belonged there. She had a small plaque made in simple metal. It read, "Thomas's Bench, built for love and rest." When she sent a photo, I touched the screen. I imagined Thomas reading that line and chuckling. "Too fancy," he would say, and then he would sit anyway. The piano found a home without a fight. I did not want it boxed and stored, sleeping in the dark. I called the church where June had learned to play Morning Has Broken, those first slow notes that made me cry at the time and cry again years later when I remembered. The pastor came and touched the keys like prayer. He said, "We would be honored." The day it left the house, Lena stood by with her hands folded. The movers strapped it carefully, one strap like a seatbelt, and rolled it out as if it was a baby carriage, slow and sure. I pictured June's small feet on the pedals, and I whispered, "Go do good work." Eric found out about the sale when the sign went up, and when he saw that my name was not the one the realtor called. He called me that evening, and his voice was tight as if he had been holding it in his fist. "Mom, why would you do this without telling us?" he asked. I heard Paula's breath near the phone, the sharp stillness she carries when she feels pushed to the edge. I held the receiver close, not to brace for a storm, but to keep my voice steady. "Because I was afraid you would not hear me," I said. "I needed to be safe." Silence sat between us for a moment, a chair no one wanted to claim. "We were trying to keep you safe," he said quietly. "I know," I said, "but I needed to choose who held the door." He sighed. I could hear him rub his forehead. "This feels like you think we are bad," he said. "I don't think that," I told him. "I think fear got loud. I am turning it down." Paula took the phone then, her voice brisk because that is how she keeps herself from breaking. "We would have done this," she said. "We would have sold it too." I did not argue. "I know you would have," I said, "but you would have done it without the bench and without the piano in a place that still knows our name." She did not answer. Behind her quiet, I felt her bristle like a cat that does not want to be picked up. "I hope we can still come Sunday," she said finally. "You can," I said. "Please do." June did not call. She sent a simple text as the sun went down. "Can I come see you?" I wrote back one word, "Yes." She arrived the next afternoon with soft eyes and an apology that rode on her shoulders like a coat she could not take off. We sat on the edge of my bed. She took my hand and cried without sound. I let the tears sit on my skin. "I was afraid all the time," she said. "It made me small." I stroked her fingers with my thumb. "I know," I said. "I was afraid too." "We can be bigger now, even if only by an inch." We had a meeting in the sunroom that weekend. The windows were wide, and the light made everyone look softer. Eric stood and paced in a small box of carpet beside the ficus. June sat close, so close her knee pressed into mine and stayed there, a quiet anchor. Paula perched on the edge of a chair, her back straight as a ruler. I spoke first, not to get it over with, but to set the tone. "I want to explain what I did," I said, "and why." My voice did not shake. "It is not a punishment. It is a protection, not from you. From the feeling that I was being moved through my own life like a package. I wrote down my wishes so they will not be drowned out. I wrote them for me and for those who will care for me when I cannot speak." Eric looked at the wall, then he looked at me. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. "I thought I was helping." He touched the back of his neck and stared at the floor. "I am sorry," I nodded. "Thank you," I said. "I believe you." I felt something unclench inside me, like a fist loosening around a small stone. June whispered, "I'm sorry." The words came like steam, tame and warm. She turned her face and wiped her cheek. "I didn't show up enough," she said. "I did not listen with my heart." I squeezed her hand. "We can listen now," I said. "We can start today." Paula's eyes were bright, but she did not let a tear fall. "I don't agree with all of this," she said softly, "but I can see you are sure." I smiled at her with kindness, I meant. "Thank you for saying that out loud," I replied. We made small paths forward, the kind you can actually walk. "When you visit," I said, "no talk of money. If something needs to be done about bills or legal papers, you can call Mr. Howard. He knows the path. Our visits can be about life." I took a breath. "Ask me about my day. Tell me about yours." Eric nodded, as if a simple rule gave his hands something to hold. I asked Eric about his work. "How is the project with the numbers?" I said. He sat down and the relief in his body was visible like a sigh made flesh. He told me about a presentation that went better than he expected and a coworker who brings muffins on Fridays. I asked June about the school play. "Lucy got a small part," she said, her voice lifting. "She is a raindrop." We all laughed. The most important raindrop, I said, and it felt like a new inside joke was born. The house closed on a Thursday morning. I was not there, but Lena called from her car when she left the closing office. "It's done," she said. "The papers are signed, the money is in the care account." I closed my eyes and pictured a gentle door closing, not slamming. "Thank you," I said. "What happens to the house now?" She was quiet, then spoke. "A family with 2 little boys bought it. The youngest waved at the front door on the way in." I smiled into the phone. "I hope they draw their height on the kitchen wall," I said. "I hope they get in trouble for it and then we all smile." With the sale settled and my care secured, Lena turned to the next part of her promise. "You should not live here if you don't have to," she said, sitting beside my bed with her hands curled around her mug. "You are safe here, yes, but you are a woman who likes a radio on a counter and plants that belong to you." We talked with Mrs. Blanchard and the doctor. We chose carefully. We waited until the papers, the appointments, and my legs all said yes. I moved to a small senior apartment on the sunny side of town on a day when the air felt new. It was a simple place, 1 bedroom, a small living room, a kitchen that said, "You can still make toast here." A nurse would come twice a week to check meds and vitals and any worries that tried to grow too large. I stood in the doorway before I stepped in and said, "Hello," to the empty rooms, as if they could answer back. In a way, they did. Lena helped me carry the first box to the counter. She had written "Kitchen Important" on it in thick marker. Inside was my honey, my blue mug, 2 plates with tiny chips, and the old radio with the Firefly dial. We plugged it in, and the station came in clear on the first try. A song from long ago floated out, small and faithful. I set the mug under the cabinet and felt at home. We put plants on the windowsill, a geranium with stubborn pink blossoms and a spider plant that promised bobbies. I placed a photo of Thomas by the sink, the one where he is smiling at the lake with the sun in his eyes, as if joy surprised him in the moment the camera clicked. We hung a calendar on the fridge. I wrote nurse, Tuesday, Friday, and library, Thursday on it in my tidy hand. It felt good to have a small square of the future on paper again. Noah brought a lamp and a basket of apples. "Mom says you need light and snacks," he said, grinning. He reached for the radio and tuned it just a little better. "There," he said. "Less static." Later, he spread his homework on my table and told me about a book he had to read for school. "It's about a girl who grows up during hard times," he said. "She is brave when she doesn't want to be." I nodded, and we talked about chapters and feelings and why quiet heroes are my favorite kind. Lena came by after her late shift with cinnamon rolls in a tin. She set them on my counter with a flourish. "You can warm them in the oven," she said, smiling. "But I turned the knob guards back on." I laughed. "Thank you," I said. "Let's eat them now so we don't have to test our safety plan." We ate with our fingers and laughed like friends who have walked through rain and are now sitting under a dry roof. The library ladies visited on Thursday with a stack of books and a bag of gossip from the town fair. "Edna won first place for her peach pie again," one said, rolling her eyes. "She swears there is no secret, and we all know she lies." We sat in my living room, and they told me about who had a new grandbaby and who had a hip that finally stopped complaining. I felt the right amount of full, like a cup that is finally filled to the brim and not left half empty. I invited June for tea on a quiet afternoon. She arrived with lemon cookies and her hair in a loose knot, the way she used to wear it when she lived at home. We sat at my small table, and I poured tea from my own kettle. The steam rose and made tiny clouds between us. She watched her cup for a long time before she spoke. "I thought if I didn't move fast, everything would fall," she said. "I thought if I made a chart, I could stop time." She looked up with watery eyes. "I was afraid all the time." I reached across the table and held her hand. "I know," I said. "You were building a bridge from fear. It took you somewhere, but not to me. We can build a different bridge now." She nodded, and we sat in the comfortable silence that comes after a truth has been said out loud. I sent Eric a birthday card on a grayer day when the rain felt like a steady drummer on the window. Inside, I wrote, "I love you, son." I did not add advice. I did not add questions. I closed the card and put a stamp on it. He texted me 2 days later. "Thank you, Mom," he wrote. "I love you too." There were no promises in the message. I did not need them. The words were enough. The wind chime from my porch stayed at Lena's house. Noah said it sounded happy there. Sometimes, when I sat by my window in the evening, I thought I could hear it, just at the edge of the air, like a song you cannot place. It comforted me to think that parts of my old life still moved and sang, only in a different yard. The trust that Mr. Howard built began to do the work we had asked of it. It paid my rent and my nurse visits. It bought me new shoes when my old ones admitted defeat. It covered small pleasures too, like cinnamon and a soft blanket that did not itch. Every month, Lena came by with a simple paper that showed what went out and what stayed. We looked at it together, and then we talked about anything else. Money was just a tool. Life was what it built. When the church placed the piano near the choir loft, the pastor invited me to come see it in its new home. Lena drove me on a bright morning when I felt strong. We walked slow, and the pastor opened the door with a smile. The piano looked smaller there, tucked in the light, but prouder somehow. A woman played a slow hymn to show me it still knew how to sing. I ran my fingers along the wood. "Thank you," I whispered, to the piano, to the player, to the room. I pictured June, years ago, feet not touching the floor, learning each note with patience. I felt the past nod and bless the present. Spring came again, and with it, the first little miracle of the legacy we had set in motion. The library held a tiny ceremony by the children's section, where the carpet is bright and the chairs are small on purpose. A shy girl with big eyes and a braid stood beside the head librarian. They called her name, and she stepped forward like a fawn. "This is the first award from the Summer Reading Fund," the librarian said, her voice catching. "This gift is in honor of Evelyn and Thomas, who believed in stories and quiet work." I stood there with Lena beside me, one hand on my arm like a gentle guardrail. The girl looked at the certificate and then at me. Our eyes met. I saw the hunger in her for pages and places and the feeling of being seen by a book. I felt tears come in the kind way, like a blessing that has asked permission. "Thomas would like this," I said to Lena, and my voice was steady. "He would stand in the back and wipe his eyes and pretend he had dust in them." She laughed softly. "He's here," she said. We took a photo by the shelf of mysteries, because Thomas always loved a good mystery. The girl stood between us, holding her paper like something that could fly. The librarian said, "We will do this every year," and I nodded. It made the future feel friendly, even if I would not walk into all of it myself. I settled into the rhythm of the apartment, and it fit me like a sweater that has been worn and washed and remembers your shoulders. The nurse came Tuesdays and Fridays, her stethoscope like a necklace of good sense. She checked my pills and my blood pressure and the small bruise on my shin that would not admit why it came. She left notes on the fridge like love letters to health. "Hydrate," one said. "Stretch," said another. I did both, if not always as well as the note hoped. When I could, I went to the small park down the street and sat on a bench to watch dogs walk their people. A boy on a skateboard practiced a trick, falling gently and trying again, a small lesson repeated until it stuck. I said good morning to a woman with a polka-dot scarf and counted 3 robins in the grass. Simple counts, small wins, life in little sips. Sometimes Eric came alone with coffee in a paper cup. We sat by the window, and he told me about a presentation he was proud of and about Paula's new hobby, making candles that smelled like cinnamon and clean laundry. He did not bring paperwork. He did not bring plans. He brought his adult self and a little bit of the boy who lined up his toy cars. When he stood to leave, he hugged me with his whole arms. "I'm trying," he whispered. "I see it," I said. "Thank you for trying here." June came often, with or without a child. She brought school flyers and videos of small performances on her phone. Once, Lucy came in her raindrop costume and twirled in my living room, and we clapped like it was Broadway. "You are bright," I told her. "You catch the light." She ran her finger along the edge of my radio and said, "This plays real songs," with satisfaction. On days when my legs were less steady, Lena took me to her porch to sit on Thomas's bench. We drank tea and watched Noah shoot hoops next door. The plaque caught the morning light. Sometimes someone walking by would pause and read it and smile, not knowing the whole story, just knowing a man once loved and built. I rested my hand on the wood and felt it hold me up from the bottom, as if Thomas had left strength there on purpose. We did not erase what had been hard. We did not pretend we had not stumbled. But time and kindness did their slow knitting, and the holes in our afternoons grew smaller. We talked openly about what was broken in our family plan and what we could build instead. We did not measure our love in favors or in signatures. We measured it in presence. A half hour on a Tuesday, a cup of tea on a Thursday, a a text that just said, "Thinking of you." The days added up in a way that made sense again. I hung a new wind chime by my window, small and silver, a gentle cousin to the old one. When the window was open, it played a soft song for the room. I set my medications in a box I could reach, with big letters for the days. I made toast with honey when I wanted, not just when it was breakfast time. I sat in my chair by the window and did not face the corner. I kept Mr. Howard's card in a drawer, not because I needed it every day, but because it reminded me that someone would be steady when steadiness was needed. Sometimes I called him just to say, "Thank you," and he would say, "You did the brave part." And then he would tell me a story about a woman who chose to leave her stamp collection to a museum and how happy that made her. He had a file of happy endings, and he offered me a page when I needed it. I also wrote another letter to my children, not to explain, not to defend, but to bless. "I am proud of you," I wrote, "not for what you do, for who you try to be. I see your efforts. I feel your love. I am learning to ask for what I need. Thank you for meeting me there." I tucked the letters in their hands on a quiet Sunday with no fuss. They read them later and hugged me longer the next time we met. Life became ordinary again, and in that I found peace. Ordinary is a gift you only recognize after a season of being handled like a problem. Ordinary is toast eaten warm. Ordinary is the radio finding the station on the first try. Ordinary is the neighbor boy knocking to borrow sugar, not because he wants sugar, but because he wants to see if you will tell him about a book again. When I stood at the library on scholarship day, the shy girl's mother thanked me with both hands. "She reads under the blanket with a flashlight," she said. "Like I did." We laughed the way two women who share a secret laugh. I pressed a small pin of a marigold into the girl's hand. "For your backpack," I said, "so you carry a little garden with you." She looked at it like a jewel. "Thank you," she whispered. It felt like placing a seed in the ground and knowing somehow it would grow. In the quiet that night, I sat on Thomas's bench again, this time in my memory. I could feel the grains of wood under my palm and the shape of the plaque under my thumb. I thought about all the hands that had touched that bench, mine, Lena's, Noah's, the neighbors who would pass and rest a minute. Love had not ended at my front door. It had crossed the street and found new addresses. I looked around my small apartment and saw what I had chosen: the photo of the lake, the calendar with new squares filled, the plant bobbies that needed more water than they admitted, the radio steady as a heartbeat. It was not the house where I had raised children. It was not the house where Thomas's hammer lived, but it was my home because I could say, "This is mine," and no one took the words away. Sometimes, when the light fell across the room just so, I thought about that day in the nursing home when the doors breathed open and my life felt like it was moving without me. I thought about the sentence in the hallway that pressed on my heart. I did not push those memories away. I put them on a shelf where I could find them, next to the jar labeled Brave. We had not found a perfect, happy ending. We found something better for this life we live. We found respect. We found small routines. We found that love can step back and then step forward again with more care in its hands. We found that a person can be seen at any age if someone will look the right way. When the phone rang one evening and Eric said, "Mom, can I stop by after work?" I said, "Yes," and didn't ask why. He came with nothing in his hands and sat with his elbows on his knees, and we watched the sunset move across the window together. He didn't speak for a long time. He didn't need to. Being there was the conversation. Later, when he stood, he said, "Thank you for forgiving me." I touched his sleeve. "Thank you for listening," I said. He nodded. "I'm going to take Lucy to see the piano at church," he added. I smiled. "Tell her it sings better when someone small sits at it," I said. He laughed and kissed the top of my head like he used to when he was trying to be taller than he was. As the seasons turned, I watched the geranium on my windowsill try a new blossom and then another. Life is like that. One small flower, then a pause, then another. Not a burst. A rhythm. I loved the pauses as much as the blooms. In them, I felt the gentle hand of time, not pushing, just guiding. On quiet mornings, I sometimes whispered, "Thomas, look at this." And I would tell him about the girl at the library, or the cinnamon rolls, or the way Noah had learned to change a tire in the rain. I do not know where such words go. I like to think they find a bench somewhere and a man who smiles and thinks, "That sounds like her. Still careful, still kind." And when Lena sat in my kitchen after a long shift, her eyes tired but her spirit strong, I would say, "Thank you for helping me find my name again." And she would wave a hand and say, "You always had it." And then we would laugh and look at the plants and decide which one needed more light. That is what care looks like when it is right. It is ordinary. It is present. It is a light moved 2 inches to the left. One day, walking back from the library with a book tucked under my arm, I passed a little boy drawing lines on the sidewalk with chalk. His mother half scolded, "You're going to get dirty," and he said, "It's okay, I'm making a map." I smiled and kept walking, thinking, that is what I did too. I made a map. It did not follow the road people expected. It followed the path that kept my steps steady and my heart upright. And when the evening settled that night and the new wind chime sang its small song, I felt a deep quiet move through me. The kind of quiet that is not empty. The kind that is full of the soft sounds of a life that chose itself. I sat in my chair, spread a little honey on toast, and let the taste remind me that sweetness is not a gift you wait for. It is something you make room for on purpose with care. "Thomas would like this," I said again, not to the air, but to the living room, to the plant, to the photo that always caught light in the right way. And I knew he would. He would like the girl with the certificate. He would like the bench with the small plaque. He would like the way our family had found a small harbor in a rough sea. I took a sip of tea, and the lemon tasted bright. The radio hummed along with an old voice that had survived many speakers and many rooms. I looked out the window at the small life I could see, a man walking his dog, a woman watering her window box, a boy trying the skateboard trick one more time. I felt part of it again, not on the edge, not tucked away. That was our resolution, not a single moment with applause, a series of soft choices kept, a map made with chalk and kindness, a life ordinary and warm that holds the past with respect and the present with both hands, and a promise written and lived that says, "I am here, I am seen, I am safe." In the evenings, Lena and I sit on Thomas's bench and watch the light soften across the street. The plaque catches a little gold and then lets it go. Noah's basketball thumps a calm rhythm somewhere down the block. A neighbor waves with a garden hose in her hand. I breathe and think about the word family and how it can stretch if we let it, the way a quilt stretches to cover a second lap. I used to think family meant only the people at my table. Now I know it also means the person who brings soup to your door and does not make you feel small. It means a boy who moves your wind chime so it will keep singing. It means a nurse who remembers lemon for your tea. I look at Lena and feel the kind of gratitude that does not need big words. It sits beside you and keeps you warm. Forgiveness came to me like the evening light too, not all at once, not to erase what was hard, to let my heart breathe. I forgave Eric for pulling too tight on the reins because he was scared. I forgave June for the times she did not come because she was carrying more than her arms could hold. I even forgave Paula for counting when I needed listening. Forgiveness did not make me forget. It made space where I had been holding my breath. Sometimes I say it out loud, there on the bench. "I forgive you," I whisper, as if I am telling my own chest. Lena hears me without asking for the story again. "Does it still ache?" she asks very gently. "Some days," I say. "That's how we know we cared," she answers. We sit with that. It feels true in the quiet. One night after the sun slipped behind the roofline, I went inside and wrote another letter to my children. I sat at my small table with the radio low and a cup of tea cooling by my hand. I kept the words simple because simple words last. "I love you," I wrote. "We can still build real time together. Bring me your ordinary. Come for 20 minutes. Call me on your way home. Tell me about the small things. I will do the same." I asked for no promises, only presents. "If you cannot come, send me a picture of your supper," I wrote to June. "If you pass a tree that looks like fire, text me a photo," I wrote to Eric. "Let's sit on a Thursday and watch the sky change without saying much," I added. I folded the letters and felt calm. A plan can be soft and still be a plan. The next morning, I watched the mail carrier take my envelopes with his careful hand. I did not wait at the window for answers. I went to water the plants and straighten the books the library ladies had brought. A quiet joy filled the room, the kind that comes from asking for what you need and trusting the people you love to try. I told myself again that I am allowed to be simple and to be seen. As the days moved, I kept a few truths close, like stones in a pocket that make you feel steady. We cannot control how others see us, but we can choose how we see ourselves. I am not a burden. I am a woman with a name and a life that still fits me. Kindness counts. Love is not measured by use, but by presence. Plans protect dignity. Love protects the soul. I think of the girl at the library with the braid, holding her paper like a bird she wanted to keep. I think of the piano at church waiting for small hands. I think of Thomas's bench holding strangers now, the plaque shining for anyone who needs a place to rest. All of it tells me the same thing. The best parts of us can keep working in the world even when we are quiet at home. If you are listening to me right now, I want to offer you a small invitation. Call your parents if you can. Visit your grandparents if they are near. Check on the neighbor next door who keeps the porch light on a little longer than most. Sit with someone for 10 minutes and do nothing important. Bring a flower in a jar. Bring a story from your day. It will matter more than you think. And if your heart is the one that hurts today, if you feel like you have been moved without being asked, I am reaching for your hand. Breathe. Write one letter. Make one small plan that keeps your name in your own mouth. Ask for the ordinary. It is where our lives live. Thank you for staying with me this far, for listening the way an old friend listens at a kitchen table. Your listening has changed my day. I believe good can grow from hard ground. I have seen it. I am sitting on a bench built by love, and I am watching the light come back.